Is this my third time, Mr. President?
It is.
Okay. If anybody wants to give me time, I will accept it. If they don't want to, I'll find other opportunities and ways to speak. If you give me time, I might be in a mellower mood and not have to use some of the stratagems that I bring up and pull rabbits out of hats. Y'all like magic? Who likes magic? See, these are keys. I don't know if you can see them or not. I have short sleeves on. You want to see me make these keys disappear? Voila. They're gone. See that? Magic. You know why I do that? Things are what the one in charge will tell us that they are. There really is no magic. There can be magic in our mind because the one who is the magician or the illusionist will distract our attention. We look at the left hand and the trick is done with the right hand and we are amazed, and we ought to be. Not because magic was done in terms of making something disappear in the strict sense of what that word means, but rather because our attention could be distracted and something can occur in a relatively small area that will mystify us, and we think, in fact, magic could have been done because we can't explain what happened. It would be good if we could generate in our children a sense of awe and mystery, but not mysticism, not mystification in the sense of believing in magic, but seeing things happen, the answer or explanation to which they don't have, but they're made to know that you can find it. We will help you find it, and we will make you understand. To get children to learn, you have to engage their imagination. And you engage a person's imagination by making them aware of the fact that there's something they don't know, but that they want to know, and that they can know it if they just pay attention for a short time. Don't try to make children function as though they have a long attention span. No, it's not one long span. It's a series of steps. And by the time you take the last step, then that child has learned something. And that can be done in the schools. If the ones who teach know their stuff, they can teach. There are children who teach other children. You watch a bunch of children at play, and let some of the children know something that the others don't know. And by the time the day is over, they all know. It's moved, but the A bill has not. So the fact that LB 367 has moved does not mean that 367A cannot be committed to committee for additional work. I know this is late for some of you. You're tired of listening to me talk about this bill. You might be tired of hearing me talk today about anything. But we must retain our ability to focus during the entire time that we're in session. And this is an important issue. This bill can be returned to committee, in my opinion, or I would not have made the motion. Has an A bill ever been returned to committee before? I have no way of knowing. But I didn't say recommit. My motion says commit it to committee, because it was not ever in a committee. There are bills, revisor bills, that don't go through a committee, and those who've been here a while can tell you that. They did not go to a committee. They are put directly on general file. They're referred right to general file. No committee hearing. But a motion can be made to send that bill to a committee, and if the votes are there, it'll go to a committee, even though it never went to a committee, and the practice is to refer revisers' bills directly to general file. So the fact that a bill has not gone through a committee is not a basis for saying it cannot be referred to a committee. We need to overrule the Speaker so that any bill can be subjected to a motion to be returned to a committee or committed to a committee. If you vote to overrule the Speaker, You are not sending this bill back to committee. All you are saying is that a motion is not out of order if it's made to send a bill to committee, an A bill or a reviser's bill. So where's the harm if you err on the side of caution? The legislators should never take a vote and establish a precedent which cuts off their right, their power, their authority to do something that may be essential to proper legislating. Why will you deprive yourself of the right to commit any bill to committee if you decide that's what you think you ought to do? If you vote against your right to do that, then you're establishing a precedent. Then you're always out of order. And it'd be out of order to even try to overrule the chair. And that's what you're often asked to do. And if you don't think, you're going to do it because you want to fix me. But if you fix me, you're not going to stop me from talking about this bill. But in the future, and it may not be this session, there may be an A bill, which a group of you will honestly believe ought to go to a committee and let work be done on that A bill. And you can't make the motion. You can offer it, but you're out of order. This is not something that is clearly stated in the rules. There's nothing in the rules that says an A bill cannot be committed to a committee. If that was in the rule, that's what would have been read to us. There is nothing in the rule book that says an A bill cannot be committed to a committee. If it's not in the rule book, how am I out of order? You are going to vote that I'm out of order when it cannot be shown under your rules that I'm out of order. You're going to vote against me when there's no rule to justify it. Look for the rule, and you will not find it. If it was there, it would have been read to you. I can interpret any rule I want to and say, well, I know it says that, but that's not what it means. Then if rules don't mean what they say, why do you even have them? Oh, sometimes they mean what they say, and other times they don't mean what they say, depending on what the issue is, who is raising a point, or who is to be voted against. Well, you can do that if you want to. I'm the one who always votes against adopting the rules. So you might want to ask, what right do I have then to invoke anything pertaining to the rules? You know what gives me the right? Because I am bound by the rules, and I play by the rules, and I follow the rules. And you don't find me making motions to suspend the rules. I stay within the rules that you all adopt that I vote against adopting. But I play by all of them. So you're exasperated, you're tired, you're upset now. If the rule says no A bill shall be subject to a motion to commit to a committee, I would not make the motion. Had there been such a rule that I was unaware of, as soon as I would be shown the rule, if I had made such a motion, I would withdraw it. But there is nothing in the rule book that says that. So you're going to fashion an Ernie rule here today, like the voters voted for an Ernie rule to put me and the rest of you out of the legislature after 2 terms. Don't condemn those people. Look at what you're doing. Find it in the rule book if it's there. And if it's not, give me the opportunity to show how my colleagues fashion rules on the spur of the moment for me. What is wrong with committing an A bill to a committee? What harm is done? This bill is fatally flawed. If you strike from this bill what Senator Jansen's amendment is designed to strike from this bill is substantially different, and there's a rule that says when a bill is amended and is substantially different, it can be committed to a committee. It can be returned to a committee. Now, that is in the rule book. But you won't agree with that because you got something you want to do. And as that fellow said, full speed ahead, Dang the torpedoes. Full speed ahead here tonight. Dang the rules. Anything you decide to do with your rules, you can do because you have the votes. Some people say that's what democracy is about.
1 minute.
Not always is democracy about the majority doing whatever they want to. Sometimes that is tyranny. Sometimes that is an abuse. That is a perversion of the notion of democracy. But vote the way you choose, as I know you will. My time is up on my opening. Thank you for yours. Thank you, Mr. President.
To a question from Senator Erdman.
Yes.
Senator Chambers, would you agree that the motion to commit is not the same motion to recommit by the plain reading of those two motions?
I agree.
Would you concur that it is not a priority motion in the list of priorities that we have before us in Rule 7, Section 3?
I agree.
So would you concur that it is out of order to file this motion or to have it be taken up by the chair before the motion to amend, which would be a priority motion?
No, because it has already been accepted and granted that status.
But had it been denied, the motion to amend would have been in order instead of this one, but the fact that we have taken this up, it is now in order.
Well, that is a question which is speculative, and we'll have to wait till that arises to see how it will be handled, since it is a different species of motion.
Fair enough. Thank you, Senator Chambers.
Other lights on. Senator Chambers, you're recognized to close on your motion to overrule the ruling of the chair.
Mr. President, members of the legislature, there are matters of form, there are matters of substance. Do you know why the Nebraska Supreme Court ruled the way it did, in a way that was unprecedented? Because I got something before the court that nobody else could get before the court. I didn't do it by way of motion. I didn't do it by way of filing a lawsuit. I did not ask the court to take it as an original action. I wrote a letter which nobody had ever done and put something before the court. But once it was before the court acted on it. This motion is before us. This motion has been granted by the chair the status of being before us. It was ruled out of order because it relates to an A bill. And there is nothing that specifically says that an A bill cannot be committed to a committee. I mean it when I say you should keep prerogatives of the legislature intact. Why do you think I drafted the amendment to say committed rather than recommitted? Re means to do again. It had never been before a committee. So I write my motions to accurately reflect what the facts of the situation are. Nothing tricky about the motion, nothing deceptive about it. I acknowledge that it had not been before a committee, and I told you other bills that don't go to a committee. Revisers bills, they go directly to the floor, to general file. But they are subject to a motion to be committed, or you could say recommitted if you want to. What we're looking at here is whether or not such a motion can be made. In whatever order the chair rules, it should be taken up. What you're being asked to do here is to vote that such a motion cannot even be entertained. If you don't like the motion that's being made on a bill, vote the motion down. But don't vote against your right and prerogative to make the motion. Those two things are radically different. I think the issue and the point are very important. That's why when Senator Sinowicki asked me his hypothetical questions, presuming that the vote would be to overrule the chair, presuming that the bill were to be referred to a committee, would it go to the Appropriations Committee or the Revenue Committee because it's an appropriations bill? That was his question. And if you read the transcript, you'll see it was, and he would agree that it was. And my response was, I'm not interested in putting it to any committee. I want to establish the point that such a motion can be made. Don't take away the right that you have as a legislature to do certain things. Simply vote against that thing when it comes before you. And I'm glad Senator Erdman pointed out that I was listed as not voting for those rules, because before it gave the impression that I had voted for the rules. I said I don't vote for the rules. There are times when I won't be up here when they're going to take a vote because they're dithering and dilly-dallying, and the vote of mine is not that essential, but mine won't be there as voting for the rules. And that's the point I was making, and I think it was clear. I'm glad Senator Erdman corrected it, because what I was going to say, not during this debate, because it's not the one I can ask questions, let's get it accurate. Does my name show up as voting for the rules? And he'd had to say no, which he should have said at the very outset. Instead of two people are listed as voting no, and neither one of them is Senator Chambers. He should have said, however, Senator Chambers is not listed as voting for the rule either. Some people are tricky, they're clever, and I accept that. But they ought to also be honest and fully forthcoming, as I try to be. And if I'm not, call me on it. But on this one, you're being asked to cut off a prerogative that the legislature should have. This is simply talking about the right to make a motion. If you overrule the chair, this bill does not go to a committee. All you do is vote that a motion such as that can be made, and it is not automatically out of order. Mr. Chairman, because I'm not sure if we're all here, I will ask for a call of the House, and I'll take a machine vote. And could I ask how many votes it will take to vote successfully?
I believe 24, Senator Chambers.
Thank you.
Wallman, voting yes, Sir White. Voting yes, Sir Whiteman. Voting no. 21 ayes, 24 nays, Mr. President, on the motion to overrule the chair.
The chair is not overruled. I raise the call. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, priority motion, Senator Chambers would move to bracket Legislative Bill 367A until May 31st.
Senator Chambers, you are recognized to open on your bracket motion.
Thank you. Mr. President, members of the legislature, this bracket motion is designed to allow time for additional debate. And that's what I'm going to use my time for this evening. I had two students sitting to my left under the balcony. They wanted a front row seat as students, and now they've deserted. That's the way it is, always is around here. People make these grandiose, oh, one of them is back. I know how to bring them back. The purpose of what I'm doing tonight, I think, is clear to everybody. I'm going to take some time, and in the process, you might pick up on a thing or two. I'll tell you what I bet could happen. I bet the Speaker could rule this motion out of order, and I could move to overrule, and you all would vote to uphold him. You all would vote to uphold him. And you know it. That's how I own you. I get you to vote against your own interests. When I can get you to vote against your own interests, I own you. And you voted against your own interests thinking you'll hurt me. I don't need that motion. I don't need any single one of these motions. And when we get to LB 305, which is next, you think I can't find enough things in that bill to offer amendments to keep us here? But you're going to have to vote for cloture on this bill, as I promised. And I'm going to make sure you have plenty of time to vote for cloture. Then you're going to have to vote for cloture on Senator Fisher's bill. You're going to have to. Then tomorrow is Friday. And you're going to vote for cloture some more. And I'm going to keep talking every time you do it how I own you. I force you to avoid debate because you want to fix me. And you're so interested in fixing me that you break your system. I own you. I rule this legislature. Why do you think they call it the legislative chambers? Chambers is chambers. That's what the name of this room is. Don't get upset, exasperated. You asked for this. I told you what would happen if you voted with Senator Jansen, and you didn't believe me because you paid attention to Senator Flood, who told you that I'll get tired. I don't even know where Senator Friend. I don't even know where he is. And then there's old Senator, the economist, voting wrong on not overruling the chair. He's throwing away our prerogatives. He, of all people. You know what they say about economists? And I'm accepting out Senator Rakes. They say if you laid all the economists in the world end to end, they couldn't reach a conclusion. Then I add, if they happen to reach a conclusion, it would be wrong. So much for the economist. However, when he happens to be on the right side of the issue with me, then he is absolutely and positively right. Because everybody's right on occasion. But Senator Rakes, of all the people, surprised me on that last vote. But I think he's tired, and everybody's entitled to behave a little less than at optimum when they're tired. But we're going to get just a little more tired before the night is over. We're going to have a little bit more tiredness and fatigue perhaps slip in before we get off this bill. I assure Senator Jansen once again, he will get his cloture vote. But he's going to have to let me go and go until he can't take it anymore, and I'll force his hand. I'll make him vote for cloture. Make him call for cloture. Then he'll call the sheep. Now, if it were a different type of animal, you'd be saying, sweet. But see, I'm not casting pearls tonight, so that wouldn't be appropriate. I wonder how many of my colleagues think that 367 constitutes sound tax policy. You got a bit over here, a bit over there, and nothing in the way of a coherent plan to in any way substantially impact or alter for the better the tax system of this state. There was a time when a bill like this never would have gotten out of the Revenue Committee, never in 1,000 years. But they had people who better understood what the Revenue Committee was about and what the purpose of raising revenue is and the changes, the types that ought to be made to the taxing system. But to new people, everything is awe-inspiring, and doing anything is good. When you go home, pick up the newspaper tomorrow and let some reporter explain to you what you did with 367 and ask yourself, is that a coherent tax program? Is that a coherent tax plan? Absolutely not. But you don't know it yet because somebody hasn't explained to you yet what you did. I'm explaining to you what you didn't do in the A bill. I don't need a reporter to tell me that. But this is what the legislature can do. When it takes 25 votes to do anything you want to, you can do it. You can even vote something out of order when really it is not out of order. It's out of order because you said that it was. You just adopted a new rule tonight, whether you know it or not. When you gave that vote, you established the rule. You cannot make a motion and be in order to commit an A bill to a committee. And let me tell you all now something that you smart Alex didn't think about and I didn't tell you. Senator Shimmick knows what I'm going to tell you is true. If Senator Brashear was here as a speaker, he would know that it's true. You know what we have done with A bills? We have changed them entirely. And it no longer is an appropriation bill. It is a bill that changes the substantive law. And that bill can be recommitted to a committee. So you thought you were dealing only with a bill that spent money, didn't you? Because nobody told you what I'm telling you now. And you don't think, you can't think. And you have new people here, inexperienced people here, even in the speaker chair. He didn't know that we have amended A bills to do things that change the substantive law, but it's still listed as an A bill. You didn't know that, did you? You didn't know that a bill might change entirely an A bill, and now a motion to send it to committee is out of order. You can't send it to committee. Now, who do you think is most likely to perhaps want to change an A bill to make it into something that changes the substantive law? You might be listening to him, but you're not hearing. You know so much. You're so smart. They're going to lead you right out of confusion into the swamp. That's what you did. Were you aware that that's what you did? Did you even care? No, because you were fixing me. That's why I was surprised when the senators who've been here a while voted against overruling the chair. Why do you think I've kept saying, don't take away a prerogative that you have as a legislator? Why do you think I kept saying it? I told you you can't hurt me by what you're doing. None of your rules hurt me. I can get around any rule that you put in place because you're not smart enough to write a rule that'll stop me. But you're dumb enough to write them that'll stop you. You are a legislature, and you voted to take away a prerogative that you need and that you ought to have. That's why I say I own you. I can speak to you in a certain tone of voice and make all of your senses leave you. And I control you. I already told you earlier that I own you, that I control you. I make you do what I want you to do. I make you look foolish. I just did it. Actually, I didn't. You made yourself look foolish because you didn't think. You let your emotions run away with you. And I just steered you. And you ran and jumped off the cliff. I tried to warn you. If you won't take warning, I know you ain't going to take advice. Think. Use your brains. Now I want somebody to stand on this floor and explain how what I'm saying is inaccurate, that it is wrong, that it has not happened. And there will be occasions when A bills will become something other than a bill that appropriates money. It's been done, and it'll be done again. And you can't
Time.
a motion in order to send it to committee. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the legislature, if you can't even understand what a motion is about, how can you be trusted to formulate sound, coherent tax policy? You can't. This is why they say don't let children play with matches. Read the paper tomorrow and let the reporters explain to you what you have done. You couldn't stand on this floor and explain to me each one of those elements in 367. Now, if you had a particular interest in that particular component, or somebody told you to carry water on that component, you might can answer. You hear what happens when I ask some people questions about the bill that came out of their committee? Who caught the mistake on the A bill? Not the committee. The one y'all have no respect for, the one you think who doesn't know anything because you don't like me. Let me tell y'all something else. Your emotions are like cattle. If you keep the cattle under control, one or two persons can drive those animals. If you keep your emotions under control, your intellect will be like the cow person who can keep them moving in a way that is helpful. But when the cattle are spooked and they're on their own, the best thing for you to do is get out of the way. Now, if you're a greenhorn, you might get out there and take off your cowboy hat and wave it and say, "Stop, stop." And those will be the last words you'll ever utter in this world. And the cattle won't even apologize. When your emotions are running away with you, your mind is going to be pushed aside and you'll do what you just did. You will vote in a way that is against your own interests. You are not able to look at the fact that you're dealing with a system that has rules, that should facilitate, but that should not be a straitjacket. And you voted to put yourself in a straitjacket. Now you know what you'll have to do in the future? You'll have to make the motion, then you'll have to overrule the chair to change that rule, which in an ad hoc way has been put into the rule book now. But you can do it because you have enough votes to do it. But if I'm around, you'll be too embarrassed to do it because you know I'll laugh at you and mock you and taunt you, make fun of you. But even at the risk of that happening, you should be mature enough to do what is necessary to be done to get the system and the process to function as they should. You thought when I made that motion I was trying to derail everything, didn't you? That I was the one trying to cripple your system, didn't you? When people voted for term limits, they acted as though they thought I came down here to tear up this legislature, to destroy this legislature. That's not what I came here for. They did it. They're the ones who tore up your legislature. They're the ones who destroyed your legislature. They changed your Constitution to do it. They said, I'm the reason they did it, but I didn't do it. They did it. They did what I did not come down here to do. It took them to do it because I was trying to preserve and maintain the integrity of this system. And my way is different from anybody else's way. But I get things done that other people won't get done.
1 minute.
And apparently I can see things that other people don't look far enough to be able to see. So you can live with the vote that you took, but it won't hurt me. I think I've demonstrated that I don't need a motion to commit or recommit an A bill to find plenty of opportunity to talk on the bill as long as I want to. But I just got you to vote to cripple yourself, to hamstring yourself, to hobble yourself, to fence yourself in. Senator Stoutman knows that song that says, I can't look at hobbles and I can't stand fences. Don't fence me in. Well, I don't have to because you did it to yourself. And I'm sure there are lobbyists laughing at you. Did they put some goofle dust in that food they fed y'all in there when you were in there sponging and mooching? What did they feed you all? You see why I don't eat anything they give me? You won't have me voting against my interests. Senator
Time.
Whiteman. Huh?
Senator Chambers, you are next, and you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. You see the influence that Senator Friend has? Senator Jansen, I will make only one additional motion. Probably. And then we will let him get his amendment, because you'll vote for it. But I'm going to mock you when you vote for it, because the only reason you're voting for it, because I stirred your minds and showed you what was jumping off the page at you, but you didn't have sense enough to read it, because you don't know what you did with the bill. How smart you people are. And y'all are the ones that my children are going to have to go to school and be taught by. White people teaching my children, and they can't even read their own bill, don't know what they put in their law, and they're going to send something out here to change the schools so that white people can be in charge of teaching my children to be as dumb as you all are. I want my children to be thoughtful like I am. I want them to read and understand what they read and not be fools and let somebody lead them to make jackasses out of themselves. That's what I want. I will be an example of what I want my children to be. You are not an example of what I want my children to be. You are not what I think an educated black child should be. You can be ignorant and make it in this world. Our children cannot, even when they're not ignorant. So why do you work so hard to keep them ignorant? Why do you want people teaching them who don't care about them? Teachers without experience, schools without textbooks, inadequate supplies, copying machines that are not there. A bank has to contribute it. That's what you all want to do to my children, don't you? Well, I'm doing this to demonstrate to you what you don't know and how unfit you are to teach my children. And I'll confess this much. We as black people made the greatest mistake we could make when we ceded to white people the right to educate our children. You think I want them to be like you? I'm talking about this that you all put out here. You elected a chairman. You put 8 people on that committee. They sent this bill out here, and I tried to tell you that the bill is wrong. But you didn't get it until I almost said it. Just like that. You don't have sense enough to read. You don't pick up on the hints. You didn't get the clues. What do you think I was trying to tell him when I said, where does this, you're appropriating money to go to the education department? Why? Why do you think I asked the question? The bill tells the number of the program, but the program is not a part of the bill. What do I have to tell you? You think I want my children that stupid that you have to tell them this means such and such, and if you don't tell him that, he doesn't have sense enough to read it and figure it out for himself. You think that's what I want for my children? Heavens no. I can say that if my children did as well as I do, they'd have a chance to make it. I make it here, don't I? I make it anywhere. I come up with thoughts that lawyers don't even have. I was advised by some lawyers not to write that letter to the Supreme Court. I follow my mind because I can think. These people can't think. They don't have a track record. They are not an example of what I want to be. So we're going to have fun when that education bill comes out here. And you better have it right. But see, y'all will be able to get 33 votes because you're all white and you're all together, and you'll clump together against a black man and black children because you hate my children like you need. You don't care about my children. That's why I have to fight so hard for them. If you cared, they wouldn't be in the hellish condition they're in now. You got these white superintendents talking about they got a plan to improve achievement. They've had this under their control for generations, and it has steadily gotten worse. They're talking about an integration program, and they've segregated the schools to a greater extent now than they've ever been. And the ones who created this problem are the ones who are going to solve it. The ones who created a system to make sure my children are ignorant are the ones who are going to suddenly teach them. And I'm supposed to go along with it and be on this floor like a knot on a log and afraid to express what I need to express for our children because a bunch of white people are mad at me. You think I'm not mad at you? Angry is the word that's to be used. I understand that. But I'm using the language that I think the people I'm talking to understand. And that's part of what this is about. I'm using this as an object lesson to show that you don't know what you ought to know and that you don't have to know what you ought to know. You carry badges and titles, and you don't have behind those badges and titles what you ought to have. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Chambers. And Senator Chambers, that was your 3rd time on the bracket motion. You are recognized to close on your motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. If you all cared about your children like I cared about mine, you wouldn't want my children to be ignorant. I want white children to have the best possible education that can be fashioned. You know why? So that when my children grow up, they'll have more intelligent white people to deal with as adults than the white adults I have to deal with. If I hadn't gone through this evening, what I'm saying wouldn't make sense to you now, and you could dismiss it. But you are Exhibit A for everything that I'm saying. I had to show you your error. You hire people to work for these committees. You don't have a black person working for the Revenue Committee. And I look at these white people and the incompetency of them. And I look at the vote you just took to hurt yourself because you don't know what can be done with these bills. Oh, you're smart, all right. And you've got the votes. But I'm going to make it as difficult for you as I can. That is one thing that I can do. This is just one night in many nights. But it'll all come to an end in the same way that all things must come to an end. And I'd rather be doing what I'm doing now and look back on it 5 years from now than do what you all are doing sitting here now like knots on logs. That we're going to spend a little more time together. And the Speaker is bound to keep you here until 11:59, because I own him too. See, he has lost his prerogative as the Speaker to say, I think it's gone on long enough, that we're going to adjourn. He can't do it anymore, because I own him. Wherever he is, he knows that. He cannot do anything different from what I say is going to be done, because he said that's what he's going to do. He can't change his mind. This is like the laws of the Medes and the Persians. They change not. And I will deliver on the promise that I made to you all. I will be here. Is there something that I want that you all can give me? No. Nothing. Am I like Senator Friend, my good friend Senator Friend, who so many times reminds me of Mel Gibson, who will say, I don't care if you don't like me, but I want to be liked? No. I need to be liked. I need justice, which I got from the Supreme Court. And even though the judges have made mistakes in the past that I was very angry about, when they do the right thing, I give them credit, because I'm dealing with them on a case-by-case basis. If they do something that I think is terribly wrong, I will say so. We know, or should know, that in politics, nothing is permanent. No permanent alliances, no permanent battle lines drawn. Things change, and I'm very adaptable. Whatever the situation is, I can cope with it and deal with it. But so far, I've been keeping you here just like I said I was. We only got 3 hours and 45 minutes to go. 3 3/4 hours.
1 minute.
It's a minute in a minute. It is valuable for me to have opportunities to put things in the record. And I'm going to keep doing that and doing it and doing it. And all y'all can do is sit here and listen. Play like you're listening. Be angry. But for my colleagues who are Christians, that book tells you, be angry and sin not. Anger resteth in the bosom of a fool. It didn't say that the anger couldn't pass through your bosom. You're a fool when it rests there. Don't let it stay there. Don't let me own you to that extent. For heaven's sake. Mr. President, I will ask for a call of the House, and I'll take a machine vote.
0 ayes, 45 nays, Mr. President.
The bracket motion is not successful. Guys, to open on your motion to reconsider the vote.
Thank you, Mr. President. When I said I may only have that one more motion or whatever it was, I didn't tell you that I'm following Satan's ethics, did I? I'm following the ethics of the legislature. Now, I got a couple more motions. Y'all probably wonder where they're going to come from. Stay here and pay attention and listen. But you don't have to, because the call has been raised. So y'all can head for the hills, brothers and sisters. Just get on out of here and leave the place to me, because I have some more motions that I'm going to make. Since we're going to be here till 11:59, what difference does it make what we talk about? You voted for cloture. I said what I do. I'm carrying out my promise. You didn't think I would. Well, I'm going to show you that if I make that promise according to the principles of Satan and his ethics, I'll carry that out, because I said I would. On the motions, I can do that like a Christian. You know the way y'all wrote treaties with the Native Americans. Write them in water. That's the way I do that. There happened to have been a native chief named Pontiac, I believe. And he was upset because the American army kept encroaching on the lands of his people, the land which belonged to them originally. But since they didn't have the kill power of the white people, they had no choice other than to give ground. So it may have been William Henry Harrison, if he's that great big guy who became president and was one of those among that number who are more or less faceless and nameless and nobody knows who they are. And he was a general at that time. So the chief came to this long bench and he sat down and told the general he wanted the general to sit next to him. So the general sat down. And as they talked, the chief would move closer to the general and the general would kind of slide away from him. Then when the chief looked at him, the general didn't want to make it so obvious. So this time the chief moved against him till he was touching him, and the general moved. Then at a point they reached the end of the bench. And the general kind of chuckled. He said, well, you know, if you move me any further, I'm going to be right off this bench. He said, that's what you've been doing to my people. That's what you've been doing to my people. You've driven us off this land. You made promises that you don't keep. You all know the history, but you don't want to teach it because you're ashamed of it. Then you shouldn't have made it. If you're ashamed of what they did then, don't do things that'll make you ashamed based on what you're doing now. Senator Jansen is going to get a chance to offer his amendment. And I'm going to have a chance to offer my motions. And everybody is going to get what they want. And we're going to stay here till 11:59, so you will see that I keep my promise, that the speaker keeps his promise, and the rest of you will keep your seats. And this, remember, is just the first night. What will tomorrow bring? The speaker has wimped out already. He said we're not going to stay here till 11:59 for sure. And you know why? Because you all have been trained and conditioned to believe that you'll go right through the lunch hour and get out of here early. And that's the way it will go. And whose hands will that play into? Mine. Because the whole day is gone when just a few hours have been expended on legislative business. So if there's a bill, you can't get 8 hours in fewer than 8 hours, and you're not going to be here 8 hours. So whatever you take up, it'll carry over until Monday, if we come to work on Monday, if it's not an off day. Read the newspaper tomorrow and let the reporter tell you what you did today. Some of you ought to read the transcript too and read how questions were answered or not answered. We're all adults. Do you give me a break? No, because I don't ask you for a break. And I don't do things where I need a break from you. And if I blunder, I got consequences coming, and I take the consequences. This LB 367 is bad tax policy. Senator Jansen used to be on the Revenue Committee. He knows that a bill like this never would have gotten out of that Revenue Committee. People knew that you had a lot of hoops to jump through, and you didn't just get anything out of there because somebody said, I want it, do me a favor. But when everybody on the committee is being done a favor, or enough to get enough votes to send it out to the floor, then you get what we have and what has been put into the existing form of LB 367. Any time before a final vote is taken on a bill, it can be amended. 367 may be damaged beyond repair at this point. But if that's the way it goes, then I will have to try to do next year what I couldn't get done this year. And that's to reduce the sales tax by 0.5%. And I know you all are hoping, as I do, that the state doesn't see a sudden turn in the economy that is not good, and you have to start raiding various funds and maybe look at raising the sales tax. But you can't do it because it's 5.5% already. Will you raise it 6%? and let people call it to the attention of the public what you're doing. No, they're going to say, cut some money, cut some spending. And whose favorite program will be cut? Senator Nankis's Deer University. It's a big target. They'll cut some money from that, and they'll cut some money from some other programs. And what is being done today in haste, you can repent about at leisure next year or the year following. That is not a long time when you're talking about legislating. My good friend Senator Copeland knows that he has a hard battle on his hands, even though the education bill, I understand they sent something out here, is not the bill that he introduced. But he's got work that the superintendents are looking for him to do. Some of my colleagues have been voting with their rural colleagues in exchange for votes that they'll get to keep OPS intact. It's so transparent, anybody can see it. Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. But I think what anybody ought to be doing who's interested in an education bill getting out of here is rounding up 33 votes, just to be on the safe side. And if you really want to be on the safe side, get more than 33, because some people make the promise and they don't keep it. Now is the time when things are starting to be interwoven with each other. One thing has an impact on something else. And some things will have an impact on many something else's. And you need to be aware of this so you can watch it and see it as it unfolds. They're having all kind of clandestine meetings. The governor and Gottschalk, G&G, calling the shots on the legislature. I told you all what Gottschalk did. He put together, he jerry-built a committee, 5 or 6 people, and called them a name, something like Group for the Advancement of Education for Poor, Ignorant Children. Then he hired Senator Beshear as their lobbyist. And now that Gottschalk has established his credentials as an education expert, by the way, he's the publisher of the World Herald. Now he's got his big feet in the middle of all of it, and when the meetings occur, he's there looming over everybody. Gottschalk calling the shots. And he has yet to deny what I said about the fact that the Omaha World Herald, which no longer uses that old building of theirs, is going to try to dump it on OPS. Some people have told me that's not so. Has Gottschalk told anybody? I'd like to ask Senator Ashford a question. That's all right. He's eating Cheetos. Has Mr. Gottschalk told you that they're not going to try to dump the World Herald building on OPS?
Senator Ashford, I'm sorry, I didn't hear. Will you yield to a question?
The Cheeto deal going.
You have a mouthful of Cheetos?
Mouthful, but Arnie gave me too many.
All right. Will you yield to a question to Senator?
I will. Thank you, Senator Friend.
Okay.
Yeah.
Has Mr. Gottschalk told you that they're not going to try to dump the World Herald building on OPS?
No, we haven't had that conversation.
So he hasn't told you that?
He has not told me that.
Have you heard me mention that numerous times in public?
You have mentioned that on several occasions. Yes.
But he nor anybody from the World Herald has denied it. Is that true?
Time.
Thank you.
Discussion, not with Senator Ashford. Is Senator Rakes here?
Senator Rakes, will you yield to a question from Senator Chambers?
Yes.
Senator Rakes, have you heard me say from time to time that it is my belief that the World Herald, the people who run the World Herald, want to dump that old building that they no longer need for their newspaper purposes on OPS? Have you heard me make that allegation?
I have heard that, Senator.
Has anybody connected with the World Herald said the contrary thing, either directly to you or in your presence?
No. No.
Have you ever seen that old World Herald building?
Well, I think so. I think, in fact, I walked in there once.
Is it suitable to be used as an office building based on the configuration of office buildings today?
Well, from what I remember, there were offices in there, and then there's sort of a large pool of not offices, but partitioned area That sort of a space, I think it could be used for.
But would it be, as a building, suitable to be used as an office building without considerable renovation and maybe even adding some height to it?
Yeah, that's probably a fair assessment.
Thank you. That's all I will ask you. Now I'll ask Senator Ashford a question. If he's cleared Cheetos or Fritos out of his buccal cavity.
Senator Ashford, will you yield to a question from Senator Chambers?
Yes.
And for the sake of the transcribers, that's B-U-C-C-A-L, not B-U-C-K-L-E. Senator Ashford, you are familiar with the configuration of office buildings today, more or less. Are you or are you not?
I have some
Okay.
familiarity. I wouldn't say I'm an expert at configuration.
Is the present structure of that old World Herald building the kind that would be readily converted into an office building?
No.
Do you think the location is such that somebody would put a lot of money into it to make it into an office building?
You know, I love the building.
Would you put money in it sufficient to turn it into an office building?
I might. I like the Art Deco stuff.
Do you have enough money to do that?
On me or in my...
Say it
No, I
again.
don't. I know we shouldn't be bantering.
Oh, no, I want you to. That's all right. We're passing time.
Yes.
Amiably. What do you think is going to become of that World Herald building?
I think it would be a good place for a school.
And if it were a school, under whose jurisdiction would it be?
The learning community.
And it's in the geographical boundaries of which school district?
OPS.
OPS.
But
Is it,
it would seem to me that it would be a great place for a focus school.
have they talked about having a downtown campus somewhere in Omaha?
I think it's a good idea. I haven't talked to anybody about
Have you heard it discussed? By it, I mean the concept of a
Yes,
downtown
I've heard
campus.
it discussed.
Is it out of the question that I would suggest that maybe the people would like to dump the old World Herald building onto OPS, even if you don't use the word dump? Let's say unload. They'd like to unload it on OPS.
Yeah. I haven't heard that. I think it would be that location would be a super place for a focus school for downtown Omaha.
What is Mr. Gottschalk's reason for suddenly taking such a great interest in education, if you know?
I know what he's told me,
1 minute.
which I know what he's told me.
Prior to this year, what great interest has he shown in education? I mean, where he created a committee, then was at meetings with the superintendents, then put pressure on the governor. Are you aware of him having ever
I'm
done
aware of
that
the meeting
before?
last year, I guess, generally.
With Gottschalk?
I mean, I think there was a meeting. I can't recall who.
But prior to that, in other words, before 1024 and the ramifications, Gottschalk was not on the education front.
No, but I think
I
I think he does have sincere interest in it, Senator Chambers.
Somewhat.
Sincere interest in trying to help.
And his sincere interest is in trying to get the superintendent's plan adopted, isn't it?
No, I don't think so. I don't think that's true. I don't think he's on the side of the superintendent's plan.
Is he on the side of the governor?
No.
Is the
I mean,
governor
I
on his
can't
side?
speak for him, but
Is the governor on his side?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the governor's side is.
Oh,
To be
okay.
honest with you, Senator Chambers. I don't know what side he's on. My impression
Time.
is that he's trying to help resolve the issue.
Thank you. Was that my third time, Mr. President?
Senator Chambers, yes, and you are recognized to close then on your reconsider motion. Oh, wait, Senator Chambers?
Yes.
I misspoke. This is your third time, and then you have a closing.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I genuinely wasn't sure. I wasn't using trickery. Members of the legislature, I would like to resume my discussion with Senator Ashford.
Senator Ashford, will you yield to a few questions from Senator Chambers?
Just a few, yes. Thanks, Mr. President.
Senator Ashford, are you on the Revenue Committee?
No. God.
Senator Ashford, have you listened to the discussion of LB 367?
I have.
Are you aware, in a general way, of the types of tax cuts, if they can be called that, which would be found in LB 367?
Yes.
In a general, I'm not going to ask you to specify them. Are you familiar with A-bills?
Yes.
What is an A-bill?
It's a bill that's prepared by the fiscal office to determine the cost of piece of legislation.
Not a fiscal note. What is the A bill?
The A bill determines the A bill appropriates the money. I'm sorry, Senator Chambers.
Is it expected that the A bill will reflect what is in the underlying bill?
It's conjunctive to the underlying bill.
Should it appropriate money for something that's not in the underlying bill?
No.
If it does, is that an error?
I'm trying to think of how that could occur. I can't right off the top of my head.
Oh, you mean that doesn't seem likely to occur?
Probably not likely to occur.
Well, if I tell you that's what has occurred in LB 367A and why Senator Jansen is so eager to let me get to his amendment, would you accept my characterization that there is such an error in the A bill before us?
You know, if you say so, Senator Chair, I'd have to look at it a little.
Oh, so you haven't looked at the A bill yet, really, to read it?
I will read it, and then we'll get back.
But as of now, you have
not read
it
the A bill. I have not read the A bill.
But you would have voted.
I like reading A bills. Don't get me wrong.
But you would have voted for it without having read it, wouldn't you?
I haven't decided yet. I mean, I haven't decided. But A bills are not that interesting.
So you probably wouldn't have read this one, though, would you?
I might not have read this particular A bill. There are A bills that I have enjoyed reading over the years. This one is not that interesting to me.
Well, since you're kind of new to this discussion, not having been here for a lot of it, you won't be contaminated by the previous discussions. Senator Ashford, if a person is to be deemed a responsible legislator, if he or she sees a major error in a bill, do you think he or she has any obligation to see that that error is corrected before the bill moves forward? Would there be any obligation on a senator to do that?
Oh, sure.
And if a senator saw that error and didn't do something about it, it would be a failure to assume a responsibility.
It would be senatorial negligence.
Okay. Who has the most or the greater responsibility to know what's in an A bill? The members of a committee and its chair, or just a senator who's from the shallow end of the gene pool?
You mean yourself, or?
Oh, you're going to accuse me, huh? I didn't mention myself. I gave a description. You applied it.
Well, I was just trying to think who that might be.
Okay. Yeah. Well, yeah, I'll say yes, yes. Okay. Who has the primary responsibility?
It's a collective responsibility, but anybody that finds it should bring it up, I would think so.
Who has the primary responsibility to make sure that an A bill is reflective in what the underlying bill is?
Well, George probably would be.
If it's not my bill?
No, if it's not, if it's a revenue bill, I suppose that would be something that would be picked up.
You suppose, or that's your conclusion?
Well, that would be what I would do.
Okay.
But I'm not an expert on these matters, Senator.
And we wouldn't call this that I'm talking about a blunder, would we? I mean,
No. It's an innocent mistake if
it's a mistake.
If it exists.
Okay.
Yeah.
If it exists, you're going to find out shortly that it does exist. But that's all I will ask you because our time is up. Thank you, Senator Ashford. Thank you, Mr. President.
I had said 1 minute. Did you confuse?
No, okay. No, I know what you said. I'm giving it back.
Okay. Thank you, Senator Chambers. Senator Chambers, now you are recognized to close on your reconsider motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. And that gesture was to be collegial. I'll offer an olive branch, and I'm chastised for it. Okay, see if I do it again. By the way, if you all do like we used to do and look up on the ceiling here, you see the beautiful work that has been done. And if you're on my side, you see horses. And I don't know if they have horses up there, but there are more legs than there are horses to accommodate them if you want to take the time to count them. I think somebody was paid by the leg. And you check it out, and you see that I'm right. And also, if you look at the eagles and then look at the dollar, you see that the olive branch and the arrows are in different claws than they are on the dollar. There they are in the front, Senator Parson Carlson. There's the eagles up there, those bird creatures. When you look around this building, you see interesting things. But here's the point that I want to get to. While we're in here, Senator Ashford is right in saying that there's a collective responsibility we have. And I assumed mine, but I assume it in a way that can seem kind of harsh. And there will be a rectification. An amendment has been prepared. Better late than never. Isn't that true? I think it's true. If I have a bill and somebody is aware of what I'm trying to do with it, and they detect an error, tell me, and I'll change it, or I'll ask you, do you want to offer the amendment, and I'll support it, or you want me to offer the amendment? But that's what would be done. Is it worth all of what I'm doing here because the A bill is in the condition that it's in? Has something like this never happened before? Certainly not. Things like this can happen very easily. When you have an underlying bill which is a hodgepodge of chaos and confusion, you ought to expect something like this to happen. This is one of the worst contrived pieces of legislation I've seen. I'm talking now about the underlying bill. When you give something to everybody, then things don't pan out so well. But if we stay here long enough and work hard enough, we can get past all of those things. And 2 weeks from now, it will be forgotten until it comes up on final reading and I decide to go after the bill again. Then I'll reopen all these wounds, I'll break the scabs off, and I'll rub some salt in them, and I'll carry out the promise that I made to my colleagues, which they expect me to carry out. You know the first one who would condemn me if I didn't try to keep us here till 11:59? The Speaker. He needs help in carrying out what he promised, and I'm going to help him in every way that I can. I'm just appreciative that Senator Jansen made available a bill that makes it so easy. And I'm not through with it yet. We'll be through with this motion shortly. But I have a bit more to do. But Senator Jansen will offer his amendment. Senator Jansen's amendment will be adopted. And what his amendment will do is strike everything from the first amendment that I put up there. Then he will substitute
1 minute
what he wants to put there. And what he wants to do is to clean up LB 367A. He'll strike everything out of LB 367A. So he's striking everything out of my amendment. He's striking everything out of 367A, but he needs my amendment as the vehicle for doing it. He couldn't do it without me. I'm giving him the vehicle. And that's what he will do, and he will have you all do it, and he'll explain to you why you ought to do it. And you ought to support him because he is your friend, and he is your leader, and you owe it to him. And you got a long way to go, but you got a long time to get there. And I'll be here with you. I'm not going to keep you here and then go someplace else, leave the floor. You all voted for cloture, and when you voted for cloture, you voted for this. You're getting what you voted for.
Time.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you. Mr. President, members of the legislature, just so that the procedure is clear, I will have the last word on this amendment because Senator Jansen is amending my amendment. So if you adopt his amendment to my amendment, it's still my amendment that you have to then add to the bill. And I get to close on my amendment. Isn't that kind of ironic? But if you want to, you can ask the chair to rule it out of order and let Senator Jansen close. Then when I say I want to overrule the chair, vote against overruling the chair and make another rule against Senator Chambers, as you've done already. You set the tone, carry it out. Don't be chicken-hearted. Go all the way with it. I can take it, but I can give it too. And let's see tomorrow how things pan out. I'd like to ask Senator Jansen a question or two.
Senator Jansen, will you yield to a question or two?
Sure. Yes. Senator Jansen, precisely what does your amendment do? I know it strikes my amendment and it substitutes, not that. What is the thrust of your amendment?
Well, it would strike the A bill that was written before the amendments on 367 were adopted. This one, it appropriates the money from the Property Tax Credit Cash Fund for the 2 years of 07 and 08, and $115 million from the Property Tax Credit Cash Fund to the Department of Property Tax Assessment and Taxation for the program 132 to aid in carrying out the provisions of this bill, of this legislative session.
Okay, so the
Yeah.
first for the amount for the first year is $105 million. The amount for the second year is $115 million, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then it would move in the way that we had discussed earlier in Section 1.
Right.
Ultimately, it's going to go to the counties, and then they redistribute it to the people who are going to pay taxes,
Absolutely.
property tax.
Yeah, we've discussed that before, yes.
Now, if this amendment is not adopted, what happens?
Well, we'd probably have to keep offering it until it is adopted.
But if it's not adopted, how will you offer it again?
Well, Senator Chambers, with all due respect to you, I'm certain that this amendment will be adopted.
Senator Jansen, I'm not going to ask you any more questions, and you just took the wind out of my sails, but I agree with you. I think your assessment is correct, and that's all that I will ask you. Thank you. Members of the legislature, this amendment will correct the difficulty that existed. I'd like to ask Senator Jansen one more question.
Senator Jansen, will you yield to one more question?
Yes.
Senator Jansen, who discovered the error in the A bill, or on your side of the aisle?
Well, the fiscal office did.
When did they discover it?
Gee, I don't know, Senator.
When did they tell you that they saw an error?
Well, as soon as the bill was passed this afternoon.
1 minute.
But they didn't have an amendment drafted to the A bill?
We got it drafted as quick as we could, and I did not get it filed as quickly as I should because you had an amendment ahead of me.
But no, this wasn't drafted when we started because there was no amendment on the bill. So it wasn't drafted when we first started considering the bill, was it?
No.
Okay. So when was it first drafted?
As soon as we were done with it.
Was it drafted when you first became aware of the problem?
Yes.
And who made you aware of the problem?
The fiscal office.
And who made the fiscal office aware of it?
When we passed the bill.
Why didn't they get the amendment drafted then? Are you saying they're that incompetent? They knew when that bill moved that this mistake was there and they didn't draft the amendment?
They probably drafted the amendment, Senator, but it was my fault. I did not get the amendment filed quick enough.
You're a noble person. Thank you, Senator Jansen. That's all I will ask you.
Time.